wait. Mr. Harris is here. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Calling the regular meeting of the Joint Organizational Governments Committee and Board of Retirement and Board of Investments for LACERA. It is Wednesday, April 24th at 9:05.
Okay.
So, you want to go ahead and
Pledge
do the...
allegiance?
No. What about your
Oh,
special?
sure. Okay. Thank you, Chair Gray. This meeting is being held virtually and in person, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Ms. Martin?
She's here.
Yeah. Mr. Harris?
He's here.
Mr. Fay?
Here.
Mr. Robbins is not going to be here today. Mr. Kehoe?
Present.
Mr. Rue? Not here yet. Mr. Jones?
Present.
And Ms. Gray?
Present.
Okay. And staff participating. I will do a roll call of the JOGC committee members. Now we're going to do a roll call of the trustees that are on site. We only have Ms. Mee who's going to be on site for the Board of Investments. Staff participating in the meeting include the following: CEO Santos Creighton, DCEO Louis Lugo, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, AEOs JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo, Chief Investment Officer John Grable, Ricky Contreras, Administrative Division Manager, and we have several members from the budget team on site. And we also have Jessica Rivas, Staff Counsel, who will be presenting. Trustees, please use the raise your hand option to be placed in the queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute your mic until you're ready to speak, and we may now proceed with the agenda.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Fay, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alright. So did you do the item 3 already?
So yeah, we don't have anybody participating under the AB 2449.
Thank you. All right, item 4 on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Okay, Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Fay?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Jones is absent. Mr. Ray is up. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes,
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Item 5, public comment.
Yeah.
There's been no items for that. Let's go to item 6, the non-consent items. Item 6A is the revised trustee education and policies. Mr. Rice, did you have a presentation or should we just discuss?
I can do a brief recap if that would be helpful.
All right.
There are, good morning, Chair Gray and trustees. There are 5 categories of changes that are proposed in the policies that have been submitted to you. The first is to update the definition of administrative meetings to be consistent in both policies. Right now, there are slight language differences. They're not terribly material, but the definition should be consistent. The revised definition also clarifies that administrative meetings includes LACERA business meetings and meals that a trustee attends. We believe this is included in the current definition, but there's been some uncertainty about that because it's not specifically called out, but this follows from changes that the boards have previously approved. Second, Chair Gray requested discussion of the number of permitted external educational conferences under the education policy. Currently, the limit is 4 per year and 6 per year for those who are on both boards. The boards can vote under the current policy to allow trustees to attend more than 4 or 6, so there's flexibility already in the current policy, but the committee is requested to provide direction on this issue. Staff hasn't made a proposal to change that language. Third, The revisions clarify that all educational conferences and administrative meetings include business meetings and that business meals and incidentals, are to be reimbursed on the per diem basis. This is not, again, a change in the policy, just a clarification, because there has been confusion about what reimbursement method applies to business meetings and meals. Fourth, the changes to the travel policy include the General Services Administration's rule of a 75% per diem for meals and incidental expenses for the first and last day of travel. This change will assist staff in administering expenses because there will no longer be a need to prorate the per diem for each individual trip based on whether it begins in the morning or in the afternoon or ends in the morning or the afternoon. So this is consistency. We don't believe this will have, based on a non-scientific review of the data and discussion with those involved, we don't think this will have an impact on the trustees' reimbursement in a significant way, but it's important to enhancing efficiency for staff in processing reimbursement requests. Fifth, there are a number of other changes to the policies. Most of them are minor. Happy to answer any questions on those. And finally, staff requests the committee to act to recommend an additional change to the travel policy that is not included in the memo to eliminate the requirement that the monthly travel report that the boards receive include future planned travel. This is for trustee security. All travel expenses will continue to be reported after educational conferences and administrative meetings are completed. And that changes on page 7 of the travel policy. And with that, happy to stand for questions.
Mr.
Thank you. So I'm in support of removing the future travel. And I would also be in support of increasing the travel to 6 and 8 respectively. So 6 for individual boards, 8 for those that serve on both boards. I think every year we have people that push up to that 4, and 4 is pretty small. 6 gives it so that every other month we have education. So I'm in support of both of those. And then I did notice a minor discrepancy between the two policies. The very first policy, which is the education policy, on it's page step 21. It's item 4C2, the in-person external educational conferences. It says that trustees may also attend other external education that meets the criteria of the policy without additional approval. And it goes on to say that international travel requires board approval. But when we look on the actual travel policy, and I'm just going to flip to that page, it says that you need board approval. So I'll highlight it here. Under trustee travel policy 3A, it says approval. Trustees travel within the United States. The conferences listed on Appendix B are automatically approved. All other travel requires approval of the trustees board. So there's a discrepancy where this one's saying you need board approval, and this one's saying you can go ahead and travel as long as it meets the criteria of the educational components. And I honestly don't know how to resolve that, but essentially one policy is letting us as trustees say, okay, as long as it meets these fiduciary requirements and it's travel to Texas, we can go and do it without board approval. But the other policy says that we have to go and bring it to the board. So I'll turn it to staff on a recommendation to resolve that.
Yeah, that can be addressed.
Okay.
Any other comments with respect to item 6C? I am in concurrence. I had asked to increase the number of external education opportunities from 4 to 6, and if you're on both boards, from 6 to 8. And the reason for this basically is that when I looked at both the Board of Investments and the Board of Retirement, it is young and new, and there are more than 4 educational experiences that our board should allow. And also with the with the audit committee, I was looking at the number of educational opportunities that either board who is also served on the audit committee would have in order to send them to a very good audit committee education. It would take them over that 4. This way, as Mr. Kehoe has mentioned, it gives you a little flexibility and you don't have to worry and ask, as I heard this morning, do you think I could go? Yes, you can go. You have the ability to go. So with that, I would actually move to increase that number of external education opportunities from 4 to 6 and 6 to 8.
I'll second.
And can we also add the recommendation to remove the future travel?
Yes. Is there a motion to remove the future travel?
I'll move.
Second.
Also, just a point of clarification that it will also include the reconciliation of the Trustee Kehoe pointed out of the language in the educational conference and travel policy on in-person external approval of external education.
Yeah, without it.
Right. And then no
Yeah.
objection.
Okay, so Mr. Harris made the motion?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll, oops, hold on. Ah. We're gonna pretend Miss Gray made it and then you made the second, but I'll
Okay.
make sure it's right.
We'll go with that.
Any other, or roll call?
No, that's it. All right. You take roll.
Okay, Miss Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Fay,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Ruth absent, Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Gray.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 6B are the proposed amendments to Conflict of Interest Code. There's going to be a presentation, I understand.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Trustees. Jessica Rivas, Staff Counsel, and I'm excited to present our proposed updates to our Conflict of Interest Code. It's actually good timing since we all just completed our annual form, so hopefully it's fresh in your mind. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, I could do it. So our conflict of interest code is what tells us, or public officials, governmental employees, and consultants, what financial interests you must disclose on your statement of economic interest, known as your Form 700. And it's important to keep in mind there's the difference between, which you may be familiar with, but it's always good to remind everyone, the difference between 87200 filers and code filers. Our 87200 filers are those that are required to file because they are identified in the government code. In contrast, those who are code filers are required to file because they're identified in our code, and our code tells them what they must disclose. So just for your frame of reference, if you're a Board of Investments trustee, you're an 87200 filer. In contrast, if you're a Board of Retirement trustee, you're a code filer. So the California Political Reform Act requires every local government agency to review our conflict of interest code biannually. So we just wrapped up that process in 2022. It actually, our code didn't get its final approval from our code reviewing body until September 2023. It's a long process since the county is reviewing so many of these. And we're already starting up our next cycle for 2024. Next slide. So the basic components of our code, if you've taken a look at it, and this is dictated by the county, they set up the structure of it. We've got our cover page, we have our disclosure categories, which tells folks what they need to disclose. Then we have the designated positions, so those are the positions that need to disclose. We have a brief paragraph addressing consultants and new positions under certain circumstances. And then lastly, we have, for reference, a list of officials who manage public investments, because those are 87200 filers, but we list them or include them in our code just for reference so everyone is clear who those are for our agency. Next slide. So types of amendments, we can add or delete positions, we can revise disclosure categories, revise titles, or do any number of other things. So I'll walk you through our proposed amendments. We've got 6 of them. So the first is to add the new position of Information Technology Manager 1 and 2. Those are actually not brand new positions, but they were identified by our Human Resources staff shortly after our last code approval process for inclusion, legal reviewed, and we determined those are appropriate to include in our code due to their involvement in contracting. Second, we would like to revise titles of existing positions, and there are 3 positions that are actually unclassified positions, but they weren't designated as such, so we'll merely add that designation. Next slide. Our third proposal is to revise disclosure category 1, which has to do with the disclosures of interest in real property or real estate. And all we're doing here is bringing it directly into alignment with what is in the government code, and the language is right there, and also the directions provided by the FPPC. So the government code states that real property shall be deemed within the jurisdiction with respect to a local government agency like ourselves, if the property or any part of it is located within or not more than 2 miles outside the boundaries of the jurisdiction, so for us, the County of Los Angeles, or within 2 miles of any land owned or used by the local government agency. Next slide. And here's the directions from the FPPC reference pamphlet, which essentially says the same thing, but I think a little bit clearer for folks when they are filling out their forms. So for local agencies, an interest in real property is located in your jurisdiction. If any part of the property is located in or within 2 miles of the, in our case, the county, or other geographical area in which the agency has jurisdiction, or if the property is located within 2 miles of any land owned or used by the agency. Now, you may be wondering, how do we know what land is owned or used by the agency? We're working on coming up with a list so that filers can reference that when they're filling out their forms. Next slide. So here's the existing language with the proposed changes for this category. So we're going to strike out a portion of the first sentence, which limited the disclosure to real property that was suitable for housing all or part of LACERA's operations. There's no basis for that in the government code, the Political Reform Act, or the FPPC regulations, or the instructions. So we're going to match our disclosure to what's in the act and in the regulations. And then we clarify at the end of the paragraph that it's any land owned or used by LACERA. Next slide. Just for some reference, here are some examples of what other retirement systems around the state do with regards to disclosures involving real estate. And just as a reminder, though, that they have different code reviewing bodies, so they may have different language, slightly different language or different format, but here's what some other agencies have done. So OSERS notes that the Act generally requires the disclosure of interest in real property in the agency's jurisdiction, and for certain disclosure categories requires disclosure of all interest in real property in Orange County. Sacramento SERS, they specify that interest in real property could be affected by any decision made or participated in by the designated individual must be disclosed. And if the designated individual is a trustee or SERS employee, disclosure is only required of real property located in the county of Sacramento. There's several systems like in Fresno and Ventura that don't specify. CalPERS identifies a state because they're a statewide agency, and CalSTRS doesn't specify, but in the absence of that, it would also be the state.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Of course, yeah.
So used by is a pretty broad term, and I'm assuming that could change. So how would we know that to make sure that we're staying in compliance if that changes from year to year? Or I just want to make sure that there's a lot of different ways that can go wrong.
Sure. Yeah. So it's helpful for folks who, if you know, the title holding companies is technically a separate entity and has its own conflict of interest code, and we have a list of properties for those filers to consult. And so we plan to do the same thing, to be updated annually to make sure it's up to date with regards both to ownership and use, so that filers know what to reference when they're filling out their forms.
That's great. Is it possible to also have like some type of map so we can see, because off the top of our heads, if we look at it, we say, oh, this looks like it might be within the distance, this may not be. I do a lot of real estate, I want to make sure.
Yeah, that's possible. We can look at that. And I know, for example, in the title holding company situation, it's a list of addresses, but it'd be very easy to plug those in and just have a map that people can easily glance at.
Perfect.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you.
Next slide. So our next suggestion or a proposed amendment is with regards to disclosure category 3, very minor, and this is the category that requires disclosure of interests in business entities that are the type in which LACERA's trust funds are invested in. And we just wanted to add one little phrase there, 2 words. So it's not just may be invested, but are invested. So to avoid anyone thinking, oh, hypothetically or prospectively is all they have to be concerned about. It's both presently and future. So we're talking about the type of funds that LACERA could invest in presently or in the future. Next slide. This revision has to do with those who manage public investments pursuant to a contract. So these are 87 to 100 filers. They are listed for reference, so this doesn't change their filing requirement, but it is helpful just for reference for people to be able to know who our 87 to 100 filers are for LACERA. So all we're going to do is make sure that our language here is aligned with what's in the FPPC regulations, and those regulations specify or identify, call out specifically the chief investment officer and the principal investment officer. So folks who pursuant to a contract manage our funds to the same degree or in the same function as those positions. So we're going to identify both of them.
I have a question.
Yes.
Should we also include the deputy CEO in there, or CIO?
The language in the code only calls out those specific positions. So we're going to stick to those positions. That's always been a question of whether or not we should be more broad here. Those positions are, let me step back. So the language in the regulations for those who manage public investments pursuant to a contract is very specific, that they have to align with these positions. So it's CIO and PIO. However, for our own staff that manage public investments, for example, the deputies, those are listed separately. And so those are included in our code. It's just that those who manage pursuant to a contract have to be doing work at the level of a CIO or PIO.
Thank you.
Sure. And then our last proposed amendment, and this was a suggestion that came up during our last go-around, and we think it was a good one. There's a paragraph, as I mentioned, that has to do with consultants and new positions. And it simply sets out that the CEO or their designee could, if they determine that this position or this person is performing work in a limited scope, that they're not required to do the full disclosure that would typically be required of that position. And all we're going to add is that if that ultimately transpires, that the CEO would inform the Board of Retirement that that has taken place. And to my knowledge, this has never been used, at least in recent history. So it'd be, we don't expect to use this, but if we did, we wanted to make sure that the board was kept in the loop of what was happening. And for whatever reason, if the county, again, our code reviewing body, does not approve adding this language, since it isn't required by the government code or FPPC regulations, we're happy to still follow this notification procedure to make sure the board is kept informed. Next slide. So any questions or other suggestions or if anything comes to mind later, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to incorporate. We'll be bringing this to both boards in the coming months, and then ultimately to the county later this year for them to review it and go through the approval process.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Rivas, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We need an approval.
Oh, we do need an approval for
Yeah.
this? Yeah. All right. Is there a motion to accept? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Take a vote.
Ms. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Fay?
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Chair Gray?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is 6C, something we've all been waiting for, the LACERA budget policy, the annual review, and there is a presentation.
Good morning,
Good
Chair
morning.
Gray. There's 2 items before you today. The first is the budget policy, and there's not a presentation, followed by the proposed or preliminary budget for fiscal year 24-25, and for that there is quite a presentation.
I'm sorry.
I move that we accept the annual review of the budget policy with no changes.
So item 6C is accepted. Do we need a vote on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Miss Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Fay? Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
And Chair Gray?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so the aforementioned policy is a companion to item 6D, the fiscal year 2024-25 preliminary administrative and retiree healthcare and OPEB trust budgets.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the committee and Trustee Me. Welcome. We're excited to share this budget day for we budgeteers. We're very excited about this. So with me today is Ricky Contreras, our Administrative Services Division Manager to my far right, and also Dr. Carlene Antoya, our Director of Human Resources. We are doing the primary presentation today. However, there are a lot of folks I'd like to acknowledge that were pivotal in the development of our proposed 24-25 budget policy. Our budget unit, including Kaylin Ung, who is not in the room today, but is behind the scenes in case you ask any questions that stump the three of us. Janik Kashigian, Jackson Sue, and Martin Sandoval with our budget unit are here today. I also like to thank our communications team who helped us with the graphics in our presentation, as well as making sure our grammar was correct. And that's Erica Heru, Veronica Martinez, and Sarah Scott, and all of our division managers. I think they're all in the room today, also here to answer questions if you dive into questions beyond our abilities here at the front table. They were amazing in developing their work plans and putting together their budget requests. So wanted to thank all of them. And lastly, I want to thank Bonnie and Ollie, who's driving our slides today.
We just need 1 second because Bonnie was kicked out.
Okay, we'll give Bonnie a moment. But while she's getting this prepared, I'm just going to talk briefly about our agenda today, which is really, I'll briefly talk about our background and strategic priorities, as well as our 2023 and 24 accomplishments. And then Ricky's going to spend the majority of the presentation talking about our administrative budget, our retiree healthcare benefits program budget, our OPEB or other post-employment benefits budget, and then any questions and answers. And then included in your packet today is also an appendix with our strategic work plans for the operations and investments. And let's see, do we have Bonnie back
Bonnie's
yet?
back, yeah.
All right, Bonnie, if you could please skip to slide 6. Thank you. So I think you're all aware that LACERA has 3 separate operating budgets that are before you today, and we'll spend most of our time discussing our $140 million proposed administrative budget. That budget provides the necessary resources to administer the promised pension plan benefits and is funded from our pension plan assets. Specifically, it's funded from our investment earnings. LACERA's pension plan cannot be used to fund other post-employment benefits such as retiree healthcare. And so the staff time and resources spent toward those purposes are reimbursed to the pension plan. The retiree healthcare benefits program budget, which is proposed at $13.6 million, provides the resources to administer the retiree healthcare benefits program for eligible retirees. The administrative costs, including staff expenses, are funded through our administrative fee, which is currently $8 per member per month per plan. And the retiree healthcare staff negotiate healthcare premiums, but those costs, the cost of those premiums are not included in their budget. They are simply passed through. The retiree healthcare staff bill the plan sponsors, which are primarily Los Angeles County, but also include the Superior Court and LACERA and special districts, for those healthcare premium costs on a pay-as-you-go basis. And then we pass those funds directly onto the carriers. And then lastly, the OPEB trust was established to pre-fund our retiree healthcare liability for employees of Los Angeles County, Superior Courts, and LACERA. The outside districts are not currently pre-funding that and contributing to the trust. The trust names the Board of Investments to manage the assets. And currently, those trusts are not used to pay premiums. They really, our goal is really to invest those assets so that we build up those earnings so that they can pre-fund those benefits in the same manner as our pension plan.
And those are not passed through to the budget either. It's a separate budget.
That's correct. Next slide, please. This slide is a refresher for our veteran trustees, but something we think is important for all trustees and the public to know. Really, it's how our pension plans, all pension plans are funded, but specifically LACERA. So the formula that you always want to remember is C plus I equals B plus E, or contributions plus investment earnings equal benefits and expenses. And you can see from the graphic that our pension plan, for every dollar of our pension assets, 10 cents comes from our employees, 21 cents comes from our plan sponsors, which is primarily Los Angeles County. And then but 69 cents of every benefit paid comes from our investment earnings. And so that's something that is commonly misunderstood, just really how we're able to fund the generous benefits that we're able to offer our county employees.
So I have a question on this because I always saw it as 70 cents. And I see it dropped down to the 69%. Is that because we're rounding properly on this slide, or is that because something's changed in the way that the money is coming in? Or
I think it's a rounding. I think it's a rounding issue where it is roughly 70. Sometimes for ease, it's easier to remember 70, 10, 20, 10.
okay, yeah, that's,
And it's, close enough for government
yeah,
work.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
But also, important is that over time, because of PEPRA, employees are taking a bigger share of the
Oh,
employer
yeah.
contribution. That shouldn't really affect our investment earnings.
But it would offset it. It would shift it over to employee contributions versus investment earnings.
Yeah, so, we are, and you'll see actually in our administrative budget that the cost for LACERA to fund our own employee benefits is going down somewhat because our employees who are PEPRA members, more employees now are PEPRA members,
Yep.
more and more every year, right? It shifts more of the cost of those benefits to employees. So employers are still paying,
Yeah.
a significant share, not to dismiss that, but so are our employees.
Got it. Yeah, because what 1 cent here is 1%, and 1% of $74 billion is a lot. So, that's why it's important to pay attention to 1 cent on this slide. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and to that point, LACERA pays out $4 billion in pension benefits every year, $4 billion, which is significant. And we take in about $3 billion. So from our employees and our sponsors. So that makes us a mature plan when we pay out more than we take in. And because of that investment earnings is super critical. This is something that the Board of Investments talks about with regularity, but it's also something that shapes us as an organization. We take that seriously, that any dollar, those investment earnings, by the way, pay our administrative budget. So the proposed $140 million administrative budget by Searle comes from those investment earnings. And you can see that that's a significant earnings. But we also take that seriously because if we spend money that we don't need to efficiently and effectively operate our programs and services here at LACERA, those are funds that are not invested. And we need those funds to be invested to be able to pay those promised benefits. So the staff here at LACERA takes that very seriously, and we wanted to use this slide to highlight that. Okay, next slide. So a budget is a fiscal plan, and it is based on our strategic priorities. So this slide highlights the Board of Retirement strategic priorities, and we developed our work plans in conjunction with this and the Board of Investment strategic priorities on the next slide. So again, if you want to, you're familiar with all of these, but for the Board of Retirement, those priorities are superior member experience, innovation through technology, investing in people, enterprise risk management and compliance, and fiscal durability. And for the Board of Investments, the strategic priorities are enhancing operational effectiveness, optimizing the investment model, maximizing stewardship and ownership rights, strengthening our influence on fees and cost of capital, and TIDE, or toward inclusion, diversity, and equity. So next slide, please, Bonnie. So we're going to just go right on to the next slide because we're going to highlight our accomplishments or some of our accomplishments. This really isn't all, but highlight some of our key accomplishments from fiscal year 23-24, the fiscal year we are in. Very quickly, the Board of Retirement Strategic Plan work plans were developed, which are attached as an appendix. We've implemented a principle-based approach to investing, or we will by the end of the year. There's still some work to do in the Board of Investments on that. Our investment returns are above our policy benchmarks for over the short and long term. We will update and revise our actuarial funding policy. We have completed the renovation of our 7th floor. So if trustees haven't seen that, we welcome you to take a tour. We've improved our disaster recovery significantly by migrating almost all of our technologies to the cloud. We've implemented a data lake and CEO dashboards. Next slide.
What's a data lake? I'm sorry.
I'm going to do my best to describe it, but I do have Kathy Delano, our Chief of Information Technology. But essentially, if you think about a database as a pool of data, a data lake is sort of a pool of databases. Did I get that right in a very layman's perspective?
It's a pool of
Kathy?
what? I didn't hear.
Like
Databases.
it's really it's all of our data all together.
Correct. So we're using it as a sole source of truth for our data. We have disparate data on several different databases, so we're bringing them together into a data lake. It's funny because I was just at a conference and they were making fun of technology terms, and they said, what's some technology that you've implemented? And someone said a data lake, and then they showed a picture of like the Loch Ness Monster in a lake. Like, this is what people think when you say that. Like, what does it mean? So it's usually used to bring disparate databases together, but also uncurated data. So, like Facebook data, social media data, all of that can be fed into a data lake and then curated so that it is the single source of truth, and then it can be tapped into. We're using it for reporting and dashboards, but you can also use it for integration with other systems. So I hope that helps.
It does, but so it means that we have a pool, and within that pool is the lake with all the other loose ends that we throw in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's bigger than a pool, right? It's a
Yeah,
pool,
but
it's
I mean,
so
I
it's
got the
ginormous,
concept.
right? It's a
And
lake.
it's going to play a critical role in our AI development, correct?
Absolutely.
Correct. And also our initiative with data and analytics and business intelligence. It really is the prototype that we're going to be adding on to for that initiative. And again, single source of data for all of the reporting that we do, because that's been a challenge for us. Maybe the more traditional role of reports where a user would ask for a report and then they would massage the data and report it out. So a little, how different departments or divisions interpret data might be different, and that needs to be reconciled. A lot of manual intervention, Excel spreadsheets, we're moving away from that. So the divisions can go right to our dashboards, and they can know that when they ask for, say, all active members that live in Los Angeles County, they know that that's what they're going to get, because we've predefined what active means, and what address we're using as an example for that home address. So all of that will be worked out in the data lake and curated.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Everybody understood that, huh? And I'm the
Yes.
only one who asked the question. I was brave. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Trustee. Next slide, please. Oh, you're on there. Thank you, Bonnie. Again, our IT division has been quite busy. multi-factor authentication for incoming member calls. That's really just to help us protect our members and keep them safe, make sure that we're talking to our actual member and giving information to our actual member. Our sole case management phase 1, which included 3 primary projects, the disability, streamlining our disability litigation, disability retirement services, and our first payment. Our first payment hasn't quite implemented, but it will be by the end of the year. We are on track for that. My LACERA enhancements, that's our the portal that our members see when they log on to My LACERA and see their own benefits. There's a new redesign. One of the most exciting aspects about that is we now are able to offer online retirement elections. So for those members who would prefer not to deal with people, they can retire in the privacy of their own home at 3 a.m. if that's what they prefer. So, but at the same time, they're not limited to that, right? We're still available for them during normal business hours and can provide all the support that they need to elect in their retirement. There's also a wonderful enhanced dashboard for our rehired retirees so that we can ensure compliance and help them remain compliant. And retirees can see their healthcare data choices right online. So they don't it saves a lot of calls, right? Because information that we're anticipating what our members might want to see or need to see. And so as long as they are comfortable going on to My LACERA, which, more and more they are, they have that data at their fingertips at 3 a.m.
That would be me.
Can you briefly address the retiree dashboard? I missed that.
Oh, so sorry. As you recall, when LA County or LACERA rehires an annuitant, they are limited to 960 hours in a course of a year, or there are consequences, tax consequences, and they could risk their eligibility. So in our many efforts to maintain the compliance with that, we had a little bit of difficulty with that over COVID, in part because the law was changing and there were certain activities that were exempt, and so it was a little bit challenging. So we try in a variety of ways to help maintain this compliance. So we are communicating with the employer, whether that's LACERA as the employer or LA County, to say, hey, your rehired annuitant is approaching their hours. But for the annuitants themselves, they can see on their own dashboard, I've used 500 hours, I've used 560 hours, and it's actually kind of color coded. So you're green, you're safe. You're yellow, you should be communicating with with the employer, like, what's the plan for the rest of the year? Red, you really need to wrap it up.
So that's really good. Are we communicating that to the members themselves?
Yes, and it's also shared with folks when they enter into those agreements.
Okay, so I think now the only loose end is the departments learning about it and the employees learning about it, but the individuals. So for example, I have ones that work for me, and I had no idea that dashboard was there. So we'll have to think about how we make sure that the individual employers or the bosses know that their employees are within that.
There's also, if I may, there's a whole letter process that goes out that notifies both the employee and the personnel office.
Okay.
So,
and when they're getting closer to
Right,
those, they're getting
right.
letters.
Yeah, so as they reach certain milestones,
Okay.
I believe it starts, they get a welcome letter, which tells them, this is the parameters of being a returning retiree and on all the rules. And then I believe the regular reminders start at about the halfway mark, when they've reached about halfway through the allotted time that they can do.
Perfect.
And Trustee Kehoe, this was implemented 2 months ago. So
Okay.
that's probably why you know.
Yeah, I never heard about this. This is great. So we should definitely pass it on to the Board of Retirement.
And, I just wanted to give a shout out to the county too, because the reason we were able to do this is they started sharing the data with us.
Yeah, that was my question, because I remember
Yeah.
there was technically a lag in terms of the time, and that was one of the things that was keeping us. Obviously, you solved for that.
Yeah, and I think most people that are out of compliance simply don't realize where they are, yeah.
So I have
Thank
a
you.
quick question. Would the employer, like Mr. Kehoe, be able to look on, would it be My LACERA or another portal to also see the rehired retiree dashboard?
Those belong to the member, so no. We have to provide that information to them via the letter, or I don't know if we have other mechanisms, but not
For the
through the.
employer.
Yes, the employer does not have access to the employee's dashboard.
Could we possibly design a dashboard for the employer or the department, the employer's county, but the departments to be able to access and see where all of their 120 days are and where they are on those things. So I don't think it's protected information. I think it's important for the employers to know.
That was my
So-
exact question.
Yeah, that exactly.
I mean, they get that as part of their regular time card process, with the county system. They have access to that. Ours would still be a little lag. I mean, there is a lag because we have to wait until we get the county update. So our payroll records that we get from the county come over on the 15th and the end of the month. So there's a 2-week lag. So the department they have a responsibility. They have to, keep track of it as well. I neglected to mention that there's also, as you get closer, I believe there's also a process where we start calling them to let them know. So there's a whole long process.
So we don't think we'll have any violations, though there definitely won't be any accidental violations. It's gonna be.
We hope not. It still could happen. But compliance so far has been pretty good. And I do know that when we do reach out to them, they're very well aware of where the hours are. So that's a very good sign. And they understand the awareness. I think, sending the welcome letter and letting them know, congratulations, you've been rehired in this capacity. Here's the rules. I think that helps and the reminders helps. But it is always possible somebody's going to go over a little bit. But we shouldn't see massive violations. And we also, again, that's one of the reasons why there's calls towards the end of the process. If we see there's a problem, we're going to reach out and let you know you've got a problem, you need to stop.
And then to address our question, it sounds like the county itself feels as though its internal compliance is sufficient. They don't need a LACERA dashboard or anything like that.
I'm not, I wouldn't necessarily say we've had that conversation with them. We could look into putting something like that together. I just don't know how useful it would be because, our data lags their data. They actually have more up-to-date data than we do. This is just a compliance step to try and help them keep in compliance.
Okay.
Did you want to help?
The
Mr.
county is
Rice.
actually in the process of revising its rehired retiree policies, and they have brought us into that effort, and we've been collaborating with DHR, the executive office, and county council on that. That's a work in progress right now, so that'll in time become visible to the departments in the county, but right now it's work in progress. And they're thinking about issues like the ones you're raising.
Thank you.
Right, and this is really intended for the member-facing side of the equation, right? So the employers obviously have the primary responsibility, but the employees also need to be responsible for their own hours. So this helps. They're not relying on their employer. They didn't tell us. It's a two-pronged approach. So I'm going to pass to the next slide, and I'm going to pass.
We will go ahead and submit to all the trustees samples of the welcome letter and the dunning notices. And then we'll also do a shot of the actual, screenshot of the, just so that you can take a look at it. Okay?
Maybe a future OOC presentation. Yep.
We can do that.
I just have to chime in for 1 second. I've gotten that letter. I'm a 120-dayer. Very impressed with it. HR is on it. Now you come from a big department. I'm working in a small one right now. So I think they're starting to develop how they want to, send those messages out to management. But I was very impressed. So thank you. I will track my hours.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Ntoya, who's going to talk about hiring, because I think this has been I think Trustee, do you have any questions?
So I just had
Hot issue.
well, Madam Chair, I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Root.
Yeah, I'll save my questions to the end, but before we get any further, on your previous slide about the budget, administrative budget, 140 million, the 3 tranches, there was the cap. What's the cap in actual dollar amount? Because 190. Oh wow! So
Where is it?
oh, it was one of the previous slides.
Yeah, it's, so it's about $50 million. I'm sorry, that's not correct. That's
Yeah, it's in one of the other presentations.
Oh, was it the
100.
previous presentation? Oh, I'm sorry.
Not the previous one, but like in the big book they have.
No,
The-
but we
the
should, we have that
statutory
information. It's
maximum is
100,
190.
it's 21 basis points or
190 million.
190 million. Thank you.
For the OPEB and the other 2, is there a cap as well?
There is no cap on the other two,
Okay.
although they are far below the 21 basis points.
Okay. So we're well below. That's great.
Right, we have about a $50 million a cushion at this point, so, or proposed cushion. But of course, our goal is to spend the money that we need to administer the benefits and not really a penny more than that. Now, Dr. Ridgway, you want to tell us about your team's wonderful performance?
Sure. So before we get to the actual budget and the dollars and cents of it, we want to take an opportunity to provide details on our people-centered accomplishments. So since salaries make up a significant portion of the budget, I'd like to just spend a little time talking about our funded positions. One of LACERA's strategic priorities is investing in people. And although we won't see all of our investing in people activities in the next few slides, we are going to provide you an overview of the status of hiring activity that is decreasing the vacancy rate. So this slide here provides an overview showing the number of exams administered by LACERA, the number of outside recruitments, our attrition, the total hiring activity separated by internal promotions and new hires for the past 2 fiscal years, this year through March 31st, and a projection through June 30th. So the following slides provide more detail on the information provided here. So if we could have the next slide, please. This slide is a kind of breakout of the new hires and internal promotions. So our attrition continues to be relevant consideration at LACERA. Promotions by themselves don't decrease the vacancy rate. So it's important to separate out both new hires and internal promotions, and the impact of attrition must be considered against the new hires, right? So when someone is promoted internally, they leave one position for another, and there's no net reduction. So for example, despite having the highest number of hiring actions in fiscal year 22-23, which was 78, there were only 44 new hires. And in that 44 new hires, 24 staff members separated from the organization. So that just left us with a net resulting of 20 new staff members and a 2 to 3% decrease in the vacancy rate. Across the past 5 years, it's been an average of 5% attrition each year. Okay. Next slide, please. Yes.
I'm sorry. When you look at the source of attrition, is it just better job opportunities, pregnancy? Like, do you have an idea of like what the substance of our attrition is?
Yes, the majority of it is retirement, followed then by resignations. We do very, very few terminations or employer-initiated separations.
I'm assuming that's very good if we're comparing to industry standards, like that percentage and the fact that they're falling within retirement category. That's a pretty good, healthy sign.
Absolutely. So actually, let's see. So historically, our vacancy rate has been in the high teens to low 20s, somewhere between 17 and 18%. And so attrition at 5 is pretty good.
Any other questions?
All right, the next slide.
Actually,
Oh, yes.
I have one. Just this is a new side of the board for me. So if most of the people that are leaving are due to retirement, and there's only so many people at LACERA in total, how many in the future are coming up on the window for retirement? And that's something that we should be concerned about for the future.
Good question.
It is. We're still continuing to project about 5% year over year, but that's based on only historical data. So the thing about historical data is that people continue to age, fortunately for them, and then they're eligible for retirement. So it is one of the things we're going to be monitoring in the future once we get a better hold of the demographic data of our current staff members to see who is eligible for retirement, and then just taking a good guess of how many might leave per year.
Okay,
And
yeah.
if I could add, that's why succession planning is incredibly important. As we noted, that there was a high percentage of promotions as a part of our hiring very consistently. That's also a sign of a healthy organization, right? That there is growth, there are plenty of growth opportunities here at LACERA, but we're constantly looking to make sure that, one of the focuses that we have in our Investing in People strategic initiative is to make sure that the pathways are clear, that people have clear opportunities for promotion, that we're monitoring their progress, that we're giving them opportunities, but most especially that we're preparing them for that future. So that's going to be a significant amount of work and focus over the next few years, particularly for Carly's team in the employee opportunities division. Is that EOD? What is that?
Is that an organizational development, employee and organizational development?
Thank you. It's glad she knows her own business, right? But that's a big focus for us as an organization, readying our staff for their future, and that's going to benefit both the employees and LACERA.
Yeah, can I just jump in? One of the things that we've done in terms of succession planning and making sure that individuals are prepared for their next evolution is the MAC team, the executive team, and the SAC team as well, to a certain extent, have developed what we call a leadership pipeline document that identifies the hard skills that are going to be required from a technical perspective, as well as the soft skills as you start becoming, an individual contributor, supervisor, manager, executive. And so that document, we're going to be sharing it with the unions
Currently with them.
It's currently with them, so we're partnering with them. It's not a document that we really need to meet and confer on, but it is a document that we felt we should share with the unions so that they understand what direction we're going. And it provides a roadmap, quite frankly, for an individual at any level of the organization to say, okay, these are the sort of skills that I need to work on. These are the things that I'd like to be trained on. And it also provides the managers the ability to take a look at those as well and try to match training opportunities with specific staff. So that's something that we're doing. And then, of course, the executive team is always talking about development of staff, succession planning, what skills do we need? And then, of course, Mr. Grable does a wonderful job of vetting all of the candidates that he's going through and looking at possibilities for his staff as well. So
That's really helpful. I just think to that point, if we have churn of 5 now and it goes down to 2 for whatever reason in the whatever time period, we're going to retain more people. So we want to make sure we're not over hiring. And as people become more capable and able, they can get more tasks done per person, right? So just making sure that we're thinking about that too in our go forward could be helpful.
Yeah, that's partly what I was going to respond to was because I saw it in the documentation somewhere about over hiring, I think at the initial health benefit kind of level. And so just from a people science perspective, is there a optimum average age that we should have, right? So based on our historical data, knowing that we're going to have a waterfall at some point of senior people that fall off, then just in terms of from a policy perspective, should we be looking to stuff the front end of the pipeline with a little bit more so as, and the good news about that is it seems like people that come here stay here until they retire, but just saying and just the math of that, like, are there any concerns or have we had a chance to look at the data that says, based on the average age of our overall workforce here, we need more new, to the point of potentially overhiring to kind of anticipate those fall-offs?
We haven't made that consideration in terms of age. We've made it in terms of position and succession. So in a typical career path, that's typically what we consider. So for using your examples of RBS one, all the way, a typical career path of an RBS one might lead to a division manager, and there are various positions in between there. We have been considering the attrition in those classifications and promotions in those classifications, and then we made the determination to overhire at the RBS one level so that we have enough people in that, let's say, job family pipeline. I think something similar has been happening in FASD with the expansion of additional accountant positions, creating a solid base in the entry that can promote through that job family from accountant up through CEO with various positions in between. So a little less age-based. Right now, we're focusing a little bit more on career and job families, although we know that people can exit and enter different job families depending on their skill or desire.
Mr. Cahill.
Thank you. So RBS one could go all the way to CEO.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But Mr. Fay's question was excellent, and I would like to ask for staff to report back to the next JOGC meeting with the breakdown of that, because I do think that looking at, I understand the job categories, but I do think looking at age, that's a real thing, right? So we know where people are coming into retirement age.
Yeah.
So we should be identifying that 5%, because the 5% historic, if we always look at historic, will never be at advance. So I think if we identify what trend we're going in, especially since we've already identified that people are retiring out, so we can kind of identify that trend, see if it's going to spike or decrease and where it's going to be, and then start to project a little bit on our hiring plan. I think that overlapped with the family, job category, really helps in projecting where we're at. So I would definitely like the data to come back to us so that we could at least see where we are.
We'll be happy to provide that.
Any other questions? Additions? All right. Dr. Natoya.
Okay, so by the end of this year, LACERA is projected to have 75 hiring actions. So that's a great number, although it's just 3 short of last year. Still impressive nonetheless. This year, we've seen hiring in FASD, in investments, HR, systems, legal, benefits, member services, and disability retirement. So just about half of our divisions have had, just over half of our divisions have had hiring actions. So the hiring projected to take place by June is the culmination of work that started, and some at the beginning of the fiscal year, and others throughout the year. So some starting as late as January and December. So the hiring of the RBS 1 class, for example, the core benefits class and the retiree healthcare training class actually started in September, and they are to be onboarded in June. So just to say that some of these things take a long time, and spring tends to be our busiest time of the year for hiring. So I know that there's a big chunk of the pie that is yet to come of the pie chart, but that is because a lot of hiring actions do take place this time of year. And so similarly, work that started over a year ago with the hiring of RBS 1s last year are now seeing promotions for the core benefits training class and retiree healthcare classes coming up next month. So there is definitely a delay, but there will be an actualization of these hires in the fourth quarter. And lastly, there is an anticipation of 11 other hires in other divisions anticipated through June. And so with the total of 75 hiring actions, we're anticipating that the vacancy rate for overall the year will be down to about 17%. Okay, next slide, please.
Oops.
Oh, no.
Please bear with us.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Sure.
So the actual this year is 26, but the estimated is 75. So we're in process, I guess, of
Yes.
a lot of people in the pipeline.
Absolutely. So that includes both promotions and new hires. So we anticipate promoting various people from the RHC and RBS core training. Those count as hiring actions, and then onboarding another 2 classes. So one for RHC and one for core benefits.
And looping it into the discussions we had before. So all of these hiring require the CEO's approval, right? So that's why our CEO is trying to get a meeting to get all these things assigned, right?
These particular positions are already in ordinance, so we don't have to get,
They're internal.
correct.
Right.
May I follow up with a question? Is the reason that we're hiring close toward the end of the fiscal year, is it related to budget that we would budget in next year? So budget is not the constraint of us hiring.
Correct, it is not.
But
The majority of these, that's a great question. And that is a strategy that a lot of governments use, right? But our situation, it's because we're hiring these large classes. So the large retiree benefit classes, they take about, 9 months or so to vet, to go through all of the very extensive vetting of the candidates to whittle it down to the 21 that will be, I think it's 21 that will be starting
Yes.
in June. But we also then, we went through this whole process last year too. So we have a number of candidates who are we anticipate being promoted. Actually, they'll be promoted in May. From the RBS 1, they've graduated their training class. They're going to be promoted to regular permanent RBS 2s in our member services center and benefits divisions to really kind of whole process. So that's really like 2 years of culmination of work. Part of that's been done by HR. It's the quality assurance group that does the training for those classes, as well as the divisions, member services, retiree healthcare, and benefits division staff who help train and develop and vet all of the candidates. So it's a really organization-wide effort to make these hires, but because of the timing of the classes, of the start of the classes and the culmination of classes, it's a springtime event.
Okay,
I'm sorry, can I?
yes.
It might be a good idea if you provided the trustees a description of the number of candidates versus the number of hires. And then also on the RBS 1 level, and then also our recent experience on the administrative services analyst positions. And just so that you understand that it's not just 21 individuals, there's a lot of work that goes into this.
That was going to be my question.
Yes.
What is the ratio between hires and actual permanent positions? I mean, the investment in human capital is incredible. A lot of time, when you're talking 2 years, that's a big investment, and that also explains why it's been difficult, I would say, to fulfill some of the vacancies that we have, because we know that we're going to invest a lot of time, energy, and money in who we hire. So it explains it more for me.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the number of candidates we received for RBS 1 was over 800, and that was like in just about a week. And so also for the administrative services analyst, 1, 2, and 3 was over 1,200 candidates.
Can I stop you right there? When you say candidates, you mean applications?
Yes, applicants
Not-
received.
Okay.
So one of the interesting things about public sector in general, but also about LACERA, is that when you apply to a public sector job, your application is reviewed and it's given like a fair shake, right? So it is touched by a staff member and it is evaluated to see if they meet the minimum qualifications, then they are moved on. So HR staff touched all 800 of the applications received for RBS 1, and then the process started to whittle. So I think, let me see, over 400 went to the written test. And then we did first round interviews for about 100. And then that went down to, well, I don't actually know the number. I'm sorry, it escapes me, for the number of people who went through the mock call. So the retirement benefits specialist is, an application, a written test, an interview, and a mock call, because we feel that in order to assess someone's preparedness or ability to perform this job well, these are the components that they would have to do on the job. So it's like realistic. They are competencies, skills, abilities that will be used on the job. And that produced a list of over 100 people. So there were over 100 candidates eligible for hire on the RBS 1 list.
Out of the 800.
Yes. And so the divisions did over 40 interviews for people in bands 1, 2, and 3. And we have selected 21.
So from a yield perspective, historically, is that good? He's right, because one way that you improve the yield is improving, and I get it that county policy requires you to touch all 800 regardless. But somewhere along the way, are we at the 400 cut? I guess when you get there, are we better at identifying prospectively the ones that then get to 100 and then eventually, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to say, do we have any intelligence yet that we can leverage to identify people earlier in the process to make sure they get the feedback of interest that we have in them, so that we don't lose anyone, trick anyone in that process that we really want?
We don't pre-select, so I think that every exam is a little bit different. The
Well, it's not
candidate pool
necessarily
is different,
pre-select.
but also we don't identify like, oh, candidate number 472 looks like particularly stellar. We kind of just let the process work its way through. And candidate 462, if they really are the stellar, we have every confidence that they'll end up in the final candidate list. And then in terms of, but because this process for that particular exam is so long,
Right.
The HR staff reaches out to the candidates throughout the process to engage them, to make sure that they're still interested, to communicate, this is the process, this is what you can expect. So they understand what they're getting into, and that this is not, an immediate, your interest doesn't result in an immediate job action, which is also something, in the private sector, most people, when they decide they want a job, they start looking and they want a job or they need a job right now.
Yeah.
Our process, and all government processes, because of civil service, take a while. So they work best for candidates who aren't necessarily looking for a job right now, but they know that they would really like to do this work eventually. And sometimes that process is relatively short, and can be handled depending on this exam, the status, the pool, a relatively short period of time, or it could be a year before they get on. So that's not the norm. The RBS class is our most extensive process, right? It's also the people who touch our members on a daily basis and are really critical of the front line.
So let me put it another way. So is the 21 yield starting from 800? Are we satisfied that that's the optimum result? That, county rules with constraints is getting 21. We feel really good that we got as much out of that.
Oh, we'd always like to get better.
Well, and that's just the question I was asking, whether we had data or insight somewhere earlier in the process, so that we could identify the people we want. And if it requires more TLC because the process is longer, sometimes it just takes them knowing, hey, I'm a high potential candidate, I should kind of ride this out versus not.
Well, I think really what you lose in terms of the candidate pool is that those folks who just don't want to go through such a long process, right? They might be fantastic employees, they might be fantastic candidates, but how many people are going to be willing to kind of go through that process? That whittles some people out right there, who would be fantastic. That's where I think kind of reputation helps. Is this a great place to work? What's the culture of the organization, where people might be more willing to put in that time investment if they feel like there are major Fortune 500 corporations, right? That people go like, hey, if I could get a job at name it, my future is set.
Well,
right? We want them to have that same.
I'm just hoping
feeling
whatever
also.
our expense per yield, right? So I imagine that 9-month process is a pretty expensive investment for us. So if it yields 21 people at $6,000 or $7,000, whatever per person, again, if we're just trying to think about getting better, smarter, faster, using the data that's through there, can we improve the yield on that just to make the dollars spent and the time spent more worthwhile?
I think the issue is that we only have a limited number of positions.
That was going to be my next
And
question.
so, if you look at the math, that yield is going to be difficult because you have to touch all 800 applications regardless. And so if you only have 21 positions, I mean, I can make the number look a lot better if I just said, oh, let's go ahead and hire 50 people.
Got it. So then, so again, it's just getting back to, is 21 what we wanted, or was 21 just the best we could get out of the class from the
21
process?
So we overhired last year. There were 25 individuals that were selected, I believe the number. They went through the entire process. They went through the training program. I think we were left with 17 out of the 25. So 8 washed out, or some of them were asked to, well, they washed out.
Yeah.
And so the training program has a way of weeding out even further the candidates. So those positions that are now, you know, between the 8 positions that we weren't able to hire are part of the 21 that we're going to hire now, right? So we're fully, I believe that that our ordinance positions will be filled, and we'll have a full complement of RBS1 positions available now.
Okay.
To hire the new class. And so we overhired, and then we're continuing to overhire so that we can have a good.
Yeah, because I just been a part of, you know, as the relatively old guy on the board, I've been a part of these conversations about this particular position. And I just wonder sometimes, when do we ever catch up? Or is it just a structural issue that we always are going to be running behind in that issue? So I'm just trying to, it sounds like we're getting close, getting there. But
Keep in mind, last year is the first year we did any overhires. So we've really just started to try to dig ourselves out of the hole on the retiree benefits specialist class series. So, you know, our goal is to get to the point where that's not necessary, but at the same time, we don't want to, we want to make sure that we keep minimum staffing levels at our member services center, or the areas where members call. Like, we don't want people to wait. We want them to be able to be served, but we also don't want our staff sitting around not doing anything, right? So we're constantly managing that whole process to make sure that we're adequately staffed to provide that superior member service. But also, you know, if we can better serve our members without them having to call. So that's one of the reasons why we also tackle the IT side of it and provide information online. So, you know, if someone can we want the member to get their question answered efficiently. If they have to call and wait, they're going to be annoyed. If they don't have to call at all and they can get that question answered at the convenience of whatever time of day, they're going to be happy. They're going to be satisfied. But when they need to talk to us, we need to make sure that they can call and they can get through and they don't have to wait.
Thank you.
Mr. Fay?
So I know we've hired a number of external HR people, because we're talking right now about what happened in the past, and we have some new folks on now. And I'm seeing that outside recruitment's at between 2 and 5. Like, that's not going to move the needle much for us. What's our expectation for what this new help with HR is going to allow us to do for 25 or 24, 25? Because that's what's going to move the number for us. That 18% still is too high of a number for us to be vacant.
That is this slide, so take it away, Carly.
Perfect.
So this most current year is on top. It's the 24 estimated, and right below that is the 24 actual. So mid-year through this year, so January, we added 3 new staff members, January and February, and then 2 more this month. So, and they got right to work. Like, immediately sat down, picked up, and started their work. So we're able to see just between the actual and the estimated that we're going to be able to produce 10 more eligible lists with just a few more people on that team. And the work has already started. One of them is already out. 1,200 people are testing last week and this week. So the impact, or the evidence of the impact, is, I think, already apparent in that this year so far, through March 31st, we already exceeded what we did last year, right? So last year we hired 78 people. This year we're looking at hiring 75. Last year we did, 13 exams. This year we've already done 15. with the projection of going up to 25. So just increased staff is really not decreasing the time that it takes to get an exam out, but we're able to do so many more exams at once that we can hire many more people across many different exams in the next
And where we will see the impact of that in 24, 25 is these 10 exams that are issued for the last quarter, the hiring for those folks, vetting the, 1,200 applicants for 3 different lists. We should see, instead of sort of the very trickle of candidates throughout the year and then a big fourth quarter surge, we should be able to see we should see a significant number of hires. It still will look small compared to the fourth quarter because we're not hiring a large class of individuals, but we are hiring more divisions will get their vacancies filled in a more timely basis, and we're going to see the impact of that by having eligibility lists available. That means hiring managers can select from and fill their vacant positions. So this work that has already begun, we'll start to see the fruits of that. And our goal, based on the lists that are in process, and is that vacancy rate will decrease to below 15% by December.
Okay.
Are any of those recruiters or recruitees internal? In other words, are exams also given to other employees of LACERA who want to be part of RBS? And is there a special list of them, or are they just counted and thrown into, say, the 800 that are applying?
And you want to explain the
They
different
show as
types of exams?
promotions, right?
Yeah, because it's a promotion.
Do they show
Yes.
as promotions?
They would show us promotion. So we have the ability to, from a large list, let's say of 100 people, out of an open competitive exam, everyone is welcome to apply, everyone can apply. And we're able to pull a departmental promotional list from that. So looking at people who already work at LACERA, separate from the group of 100, that might yield, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 applicants who applied. And we are able to hire from that departmental promotional list.
And we do that throughout the year. Some exams or some exams are only open for promotional, some are open and competitive, and we can do a combination. So we definitely want to make sure we have a healthy new supply of candidates, but we also do not want to leave our existing staff who are prepared and ready for promotion. We want to be able to promote them.
So they are included in this metric then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They show as promotions on the previous slide where you're looking
Right.
at.
Okay.
I'll just briefly say I really appreciate staff's effort on this. You've heard the board loud and clear and have been working very hard, so I appreciate that. And the overhiring thing that we started last year, I think is coming to life. So I think that's a huge step up and better than what a lot of county departments do, including my own, on being able to fill those vacancies. So I really appreciate the effort, and I'm looking forward to seeing the end results.
Thank you.
I think the only thing that I'd like to see in a little bit more detail, because I couldn't derive it from reviewing the materials, is just when we think about filling the vacancies across the departments, right? So from investments all the way down, it'd be nice to kind of get some type of visual representation of how the new staffing, whether it's increasing the average lists or candidates for consideration per group, just so I can kind of see how 21 falls to 15. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just hard for me to kind of, again, having been on the board for so long and having seen kind of like a perpetual, it's not a criticism, just kind of where we've been. Now I'm just trying to imagine, okay, well, what is really changing in terms of that flow, right? That gets us from 21 to 15. It would just be nice to kind of see at least how you see it internally coming through. That'd be great.
And to Trustee Jones' point, like the idea of what we have by December versus what we have by FY or fiscal year 25. If we have these new folks, do we want to get the number of vacancy down to 10? Is it 5? Right? Like we may not be exactly right, but we would want to have a North Star to see are we getting towards there? Because we know there's going to be fluctuations in the timing, but like that's what these new folks are going to be judged on, and that's we know that we need within all sides of the picture.
If you need additional resources, then I just want to make sure, as the board, we continue to support the need for resources, process, technology, whatever that is, that allows us to get that down there.
Yeah, those additional resources that the board previously approved have really just been implemented. So we definitely like to give it some time to see how the impact of that is, but we did want to point out that just in the additional hiring that's happened since December, January, we've already seen the impact on the number of eligible lists, which will then translate into the increase in the number of hires, decrease our number of vacancies. But we are while we are, all of the positions we request here at LACERA, we believe are necessary and needed. We don't have fluff, we don't, so our goal is really to get to 100% filled, right? But we realistically, we know that's not going to happen overnight. So maybe not ever, but certainly we wanna, the 20% vacancy rate is unacceptable. It hurts service, it hurts employee morale. It's not good for anybody. So the resources that you all have approved and that Carly is very effectively deploying, and support of the entire rest of the organization, because the hiring managers play a very critical role in this process, is ensuring that we're able to, that we're gonna get there. And in this whole process, what's also really important is at no time, despite our vacancies, have we lowered our standards. So we only want, we see these as 30-year plus employees, right? So when we hire somebody, we're hoping and anticipating that they are, that they all could be the future CEO, that they won't, but they could be. We want them, we want to give them that opportunity. So we're excited to hire them. We are excited to keep them for the long term. And we're going to do everything possible to help them be successful. At the end of the day, it really will be up to them. But we don't want to make sure that there aren't artificial barriers in place in that process.
Mr. Santos.
Yeah, it's just
Mr. Priman.
this one. Is he here?
Yeah.
Probably.
Just
Always.
Just one last point. I think you should know that the strategy that we employed over the last couple of years is that we wanted to take care of the pent-up demand for promotions in our organization. And so by looking at the numbers, you can see that there's quite a bit of movement that had happened. And so we made a conscious effort and a decision to say, okay, let's take care of the promotions and get people in those positions so that they can, prosper, and they could assist us with working on our work culture. That is another element of hiring. And so that contributed to the vacancy rate, because we weren't able to focus in on those. We could have done it the other way and said, okay, let's bring everybody on board and then do the promotions, but we didn't do that. And so we do have a target of 15%. It's not a hard and fast one, but it's aspirational to the end of the calendar year. I think at the end of the calendar year.
Yes, December.
Okay, because they got upset with me last meeting when I said something that pushed them. But I think it's important for us to understand that we have focused in on this. Carly has made some significant changes within her own organization. She's gone to a liaison model to assist with the more technical, the legal services and the investment side. They have a liaison now that works.
All divisions do.
All divisions now do. But especially, we're also using the outside recruiters to assist with the technical. Even the IT right now are in the process of interviewing folks. And so things are moving, and it has to do with, the groundwork that we had laid. It was, quite frankly, when I got here 4.5 years ago, the administrative services side of the shop was lacking. We had really, really high vacancies in those particular areas, and then the systems that we needed to automate a lot of the procedures were not there, and they are there now. And so we're seeing a lot better flow, bigger candidate pools. But we all want a big candidate pool, but it causes a lot of a lot of work on the back end, so.
All right. You have one question? Ms. Mee? Oh, that's okay. You go to react down at the bottom.
Yeah, it said I need a dial number. I don't know why.
Well, that's okay. Just raise your hand. Okay.
Okay. So I do have a question, actually.
Ms. Mee?
Might be a little bit difficult question to answer. I know most of division have people need to be hired, need to fill the vacancy.
Turn your
Right, so-
microphone on.
Is your microphone on?
It's
Yeah,
on.
it's on.
Okay.
So my question is, how do you prioritize which division to hire to fill position first? I'm coming from board investment. Might be biased, right? I want the investment staff to be filled because that's the division that on the 69 cents our dollars to pay the benefit. So it's critical. But I also understand many other divisions is to have a critical function too. So how do you manage and prioritize the order of the hiring in different division?
And that's a great question. And, you know, one could argue we haven't gotten it right, but I think we've done our best. We have a process where the executive, well, we did two things. First, we asked HR, what is your capacity? How many exams can you offer? And it does depend on the complexity of the exams. So we looked at all of our vacancies across the organization. The executive team looked at our vacancies, and we made the argument why our positions needed to be filled. How was it going to benefit the organization? How was it going to advance our capacity to provide services, balancing everything out? And we discussed and negotiated, and we came up with an initial plan. And then we look at that plan at least every 3 months. How is it going? Are we able to add capacity? How successful have we been? And just so that you know, Ms. Mee, the investments positions are investments in legal have been at the top of the priority for the last 2 years that I've been here in terms of our hiring. And we have hired a number of folks. However, they are very difficult positions to fill because they are, while we get a number of candidates, we don't get 1,200 candidates. But we still get quite a number. But that doesn't mean that they meet the minimum qualifications, or even if they do meet the minimum qualifications, it doesn't mean that those candidates meet our really highest of high standards for those positions. The ones that are very technical or specialized are incredibly difficult because sometimes candidates think, well, I can do that, right? And maybe they can, but a lot of them really don't have the experience that we're looking for so that they can hit the ground running and really do that job. So we will be reporting, I think, to the Board of Investment next month with some more detailed information about our investments hiring and process at the board's request. But suffice it to say, we do have a process that we do have a plan. It is developed by management. It is reviewed periodically and assessed, and it takes into consideration the added capacity that we now have here with Human Resources
Mr. Cronin?
Yes, the only thing I would add is that the division managers definitely have the ability to advocate for moving up and down the priority list. Of course, we take input from the trustees as well. So one of the things that did move up on the list was hiring some of the audit committee staff that the audit committee requested. So we've been working with Mr. Bendel pretty closely to make sure we develop the right exams, and those are in the process of being completed and then being posted. So ultimately, the decision in terms of what the priorities are is mine. And so I determine what the priority is going to be based on the input from the executive staff and the division managers, conversations that I have with individual trustees as well as part of the board. And so that's the way we prioritize the work. And member services has been a priority for us as well, because we lost time because of the pandemic. We were not able to hire. That moved up. Administrative services in terms of trying to get the IT people, trying to get the human resources folks, that moved up on the list. And so it's pretty extensive. The one thing that we do as part of our intranet is that all the division managers have access to that priority list, which is highly unusual for an organization. And so they can take a look and see, okay, this position is my position. It's in tier 1, tier 2, tier 0, tier 3, and they can go ahead and talk to their AEOs and make a case. I don't participate in those one-on-one meetings, but that's the way the priorities are done.
Ms. Natoya, or Dr. Natoya, is there more to your presentation?
No, so I think these past couple of slides have demonstrated the concerted efforts of the executive office, the division managers, SMEs, and HR. And whereas we have a couple of things in the hopper now, there are things that we've started now that won't be realized until next year. So there'll be more. So for example, in administrative services divisions, they have 1,200 people going through an exam. They probably won't clear backgrounds in enough time to start by June 1st, but maybe July 1st. So some of the things will carry over, and yeah, we all look forward to seeing what happens right at the turn of the year. And as the year turns, Ms. Contreras is going to talk to us about money, a little bit of the admin, OPEB, and RHC budgets.
Got one last question for Dr. Latoya. Have you what is our humanoid strategy? Have we determined whether we were going to do lab grown?
I was going to say, no, the androids have not been deployed.
I was actually at a conference where the humanoid conference or conversation did take place, but yes. Go ahead.
Ms. Contreras, please.
Yes, I'm here to talk about the money. Yes. Thank you so much for having me here today. Of course, I'm going to start with the first of 3 budgets. Let's see, Bonnie, do you mind moving our slide? Thank you. So the first of the 3 budgets we will discuss today is our administrative budget. This is the financial plan for how we administer and fund the pension benefits for our members. Next slide, please. In reviewing the budget binders, you'll notice a consistent format for each division, moving from a high-level 1-page summary to greater detail as you work your way back. We hope this assists trustees now and throughout the year should you need to reference the budget. Next slide, please. Before we dive deeper into the budget, let's discuss our budget assumptions. LACERA uses incremental-based budgeting. We take the prior year adopted budget as our base and focus on changes to our core costs and activities. I won't read the slide to you, however, I would like to highlight a few of the salaries and employee benefits assumptions. The first assumption I would like to highlight is related to our cost of living. As our current MOU expires at the end of this calendar year, no COLAs beyond 1/1/25 were included. The second assumption is related to our benefit costs, which is an estimated 65% of salaries. And the third assumption is related to our retirement benefits core training class, which we just had an extensive discussion about. We did overhire 11 team members to ensure steady, consistent staffing. This cost will be absorbed by salary savings due to assumed attrition. Finally, all new positions were only added when supported by our planned hiring activity and the availability of ordinance, as we did not want to add to our vacancy rate as discussed by Carly. Next slide, please. For fiscal year 24-25, the statutory limit under SORL is approximately $190 million. That limit is set at 21 basis points of the actuarial accrued liability as of June 30th, 2023. The preliminary budget totals approximately $140 million. The difference approximately is $50 million, and it remains available to the boards to appropriate if some emergency or unplanned need were to arise. Because we have not budgeted for any cost of living increases for the last 6 months of fiscal year 24-25, it is possible that staff may request an additional appropriation. However, every effort will be made to absorb the increase. Next slide, please. This slide shows a 3-year trend of LACERA's administrative budget in millions, with the orange column on the far right representing our fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget request.
Kind of just a quick aside question. If you go back to the slide previous to that, have we, and this is maybe for John as well, have we, if we were to implement a bonus program across the organization in this kind of relationship that we, at least I've been privy to for the last 4 years in terms of the total appropriation, how much we come short, have we looked at what it would do to the budget at all in terms of, just the basic run-of-the-mill bonus program would add.
Yeah, we have not done that.
Okay,
We're waiting for the study to be completed to give us a better
better idea what that is.
understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Contreras?
Yes.
Quick question, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
sorry.
On that note, I had a question about the $140 million budget, the basis point of 21 basis points out of, is it 70 billion or what's 21 basis points out of?
It's out of the actuarial accrued liability.
Oh,
So it doesn't really make sense,
About
but that's
90
what Searle requires.
According to Ted, it's based, 90 billion is the.
90, yeah, that's what I thought, okay, yeah. Because I was like, yeah, we're not 90, but, and can you quickly comment on last year, 23, 24, there's a huge dip.
I think on the next slide, correct?
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, the next slide, yeah.
So we're gonna go to,
So that has to do with our projected actuals versus the difference between our adopted budget and projected actuals, and then jumping up to 140 million. That's your question, Trustee Rue?
Yeah. So,
our projected actuals are approximately 120 million.
okay.
And so are you looking at what our proposed budget is?
No, oh, no, you know
projected
what? I looked at it wrong. I thought the previous bars were 22, 23, and then 21, 22, so I thought it would, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, there is a discrepancy.
But there is, right?
Yeah.
I thought I saw a previous slide, yeah.
About
You have a
20
$15 million discrepancy between the adopted budget and then our projected actual expenses.
Mhm.
So that means that we over budgeted and underspend, which can be good or could be bad. So it could mean that we didn't plan out properly or that we did a lot of savings. So what was the cause in that discrepancy?
What's the answer?
You want to tackle it? You want me to tackle it?
I'll go ahead and tackle it.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I can
All right.
tackle it.
No, it's
I
fine.
can tackle
No, it's
it.
fine. You'll fill in where I mess up. How's that? The majority of that difference really has to do with salary savings, right? Because we don't budget for 100%, but we do budget. We did budget aggressively to fill, optimistically perhaps, to fill our vacancies. And we also have a certain amount of flexibility in our budget, which one of the advantages of LACERA versus other government entities is that we're not resource constrained. With the county or other government agencies, you can't spend more than what you're taking in. And then that causes people to kind of hoard. One of the nice things about working at LACERA after coming from 25 years with the city of Los Angeles, which definitely is budget constrained, is that we're not hoarding. If we want to have the flexibility in our budget to invest in the ways that we need to invest to support our members and to pay our staffs, but we don't want to spend money to spend it because it's available. Any funds not spent stay in that trust, continue to be invested, and it gives us, we are fiduciaries and we take that seriously. So when we make a decision to spend a LACERA dollar, the budget is one factor, but it is not the primary factor. The primary factor is this needed to advance the work of the organization? So it's a little bit of not filling the positions, and it's a whole lot of, if we don't need to spend this money right now, or it's not prudent, or it's a little bit delayed, that's fine. But there's no shell game or funny business in that process. It is every dollar spent is a dollar needed to advance the mission.
Mr. Kehoe? Oh, I'm sorry.
But I think what if I did take a little words out of your mouth, Trustee Kehoe, I think what he was also suggesting too is it's great on the one side to kind of like save the money, but we don't want to be saving the money by underinvesting in areas that,
Absolutely.
And I know our management's sophisticated enough, but I think that was the other part of the sentence he was trying to, or the idea that he was trying to communicate that I was interested in hearing you talk about as well, is just having been on the board, he's been on it even longer than me, there just seems there's been some stressors in the organization, and I'd rather spend the money today to not have to see it 2 years from now or 3 years from now, if it means that. So,
Sure.
Mr. Kehoe?
So I have two questions. One to close out on this question and a whole separate one. as far as the closeout on this one, we're talking about 15 million and we're looking at staffing. I mean, we're talking 50 to 75 people that we over budgeted for. So just off the top of my head with math, when you're talking about SNEB. So there's definitely something that I do think we need to resolve. But I would just ask that in the future, when there is a discrepancy between adopted and projected, that that it's identified. I mean, this is an anticipated question, so identify that and then just report out. Because I know we kind of put you on a spot with that, and I don't know if we're talking about 100% of this discrepancy is caused from staffing, or 50% from staffing, 50% from another project that we scrapped and we pushed on to next year. I'm sure there's legitimate reasons why, and we definitely encourage savings wherever we possibly can. But I think that the board should be aware of any of those things so that we could talk about it, because some of these things may be better to keep as a revised budget issue, right? So don't be afraid to say, hey, our budget's 115 million, but we have to come back and ask for 5 million because we did such a great job on overhiring, right? That is I think probably better. But if it causes, structural issues or things like that, then that's something to look at. So I would just ask that in the future that those discrepancies are just brought to the board's attention and mentioned why. That's that issue. And then my other question ties still into our administrative budget is, so the 190 is the Searle cap, 140 is where we are. We're at about 35% difference between those two. And I would suspect if we look back historically that's actually getting a little bit closer and closer together. It's still good that we have a difference. So have we ever looked at the 140 projected out 20, 30 years from now with salary and employee benefits, with estimated COLA raises, and to see how close we're getting to that statutory limit? Because I think it's important when we're looking at either legislatively or staffing wise and employee benefits, if we're getting closer and closer, this might be something that we need to look at long-term wise. It's not anything that probably any of our lifetimes, but we have to be good stewards for future boards, right?
Right, Trustee Keough, we have not done long-term planning like that, and I think certainly one of the advantages of our new budget system is that that should assist us in being able to do that moving forward. So I think we can certainly come back and look at that. There are also costs associated in our administrative budget that are technically that are actually called for in Searle to be excluded that we include. So we could take a look at that. How much of that could we take out to make it to assess that difference? We were already planning on looking at that for this next year. And then what are the drivers of our costs? So one of them might be our OPEB costs or other post-employment benefit costs, and as part of our budget policy that you approved, is looking forward as a way of doing that pre-funding. And the advantage of doing pre-funding, there's a few advantages, but one is as a pay-as-you-go basis, you're really subject to kind of a more volatile swing of the market of the cost of healthcare. When you pre-fund, then you are using more of your investment, leveraging your investment dollars to be able to even out those costs over time. So that gets to your point of how do we sort of manage that long-term ability to stay well within our reasonable limits. But we can certainly do that longer-term projection and I think that's a very good suggestion.
That was exactly what I was thinking, because I mean, there's, I want to say a way around it, but a way to make this process and our budget cap work more is maybe some pre-funding of things to reduce future costs, or to put things in investment funds that could be used for future budgetary costs and things like that. And the more that we know, like I said, right now we're not there, but we may eventually get there, especially with the inflation and all those pressures and costs going up. These type of things might get us closer. So the more that we do in advance to reduce those costs long term, the more we have flexibility as a board. So thank you.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Mr. Fryman.
Yes,
can
and
respond to
to your first point, Trustee Keel, we'll go ahead and prepare an FYI memo that explains the differences between the actuals and the adopted 23-24 budget, so that
Yeah.
it's detailed.
And I think including it, because this has to be adopted by both boards, it's gonna
Yes.
go individually, so maybe just as
Well, we
part of
can-
the presentation or.
Absolutely, we'll provide it to the boards when we report back.
And I think one of the elements that would be helpful too, given the board-approved jump in technology investments we've made ever since you got here and the 100-day plan and everything else, I would expect part of that curve to moderate over time just from improved productivity because of the technology investments that we've made. And I don't know if we've had a chance yet. I don't know if the 4 or 5 years since you've been here to kind of say versus the technology spend, here are costs we've avoided as we've scaled and gotten more productive because of it. You know, it might be worth at some point capturing a 5-year window just so that the board can kind of see that for every technology dollar that we approve, here's how it works through the organization, you know, from that perspective too as well.
And just add to that too, especially if we start talking about adding bonuses to the investment staff and this number goes up, we want to see how can we offset that with, whether it's tech or whatever else, we need to make sure that we're fully funded, so.
Okay.
Ms. Contreras?
Yes, okay. Bonnie, the next slide, please. The administrative budget has 2 main categories: salaries and employee benefits, and services and supplies. The proposed budget for salaries and employee benefits totals approximately $105 million, or $2 million more than fiscal year 23-24. The proposed budget for salaries and services and supplies totals approximately $35 million, or $2.2 million more than fiscal year 23-24. Next slide, please. This slide highlights our fiscal year 23-24 budget to projected actuals and compares that to the fiscal year budget request, the budget request highlighted in gold, which is 140. And you can see that our projected cost for fiscal year 23-24, which is column 4, is approximately 120 million as compared to our request for 140 million, which we just discussed. We're going to drill down into the biggest drivers of these increases in the next few slides. Next slide, please. This is the same information that was provided on slide 21, but by division. The executive office is a bit misleading because the cost for the information security office is split out this year. The divisions with the largest monetary increases are systems, investments, member services, and administrative services. And the biggest driver of these costs is the number of vacant positions that will be filled in the 4th quarter of the current fiscal year and in the 1st quarter of fiscal year 24-25. The second biggest driver is our investment in technology. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, we will dive deeper into proposed staffing changes and what those net 6 new permanent positions will be responsible for. The biggest change, however, is full year funding for 40 vacant positions we plan to onboard in the 4th quarter of the current fiscal year, as well as close to full year funding for many positions we expect to onboard in the 1st quarter of 24-25. Fortunately, hiring permanent staff means we are able to reduce our reliance on temporary staffing. And the fiscal year 24-25 budget reflects a nearly 26% decrease in temporary staffing costs. We also see increases in salaries due to salary step and merit increases, but the budget does not include COLAs beyond December 31st, 24, when our current MOU expires. Once negotiations conclude, staff will assess if a mid-year budget adjustment will be necessary. And finally, LACERA as an employer will see reduced pension contribution costs of approximately $1.6 million as a larger percentage of our workforce are PEPRA plan members. Next. Yes. Thank you. Next slide, please. This slide provides a summary of all the position changes requested for fiscal year 24-25. LACERA requests a net addition of 6 positions. New positions are added for the vendor management program, for FASD, and for legal services. And we will talk more about these changes in the coming slides. New positions were only added where the classification was already prioritized in the hiring plan and where we already had a sufficient position authority in the ordinance. We do not wish to add any new positions, only to keep them unfilled for any extended periods while we wait for eligibility lists or for the Board of Supervisors to approve new positions in the ordinance. Once one position is deleted in admin services, one vacant financial analyst 1 is proposed to be upgraded to a 2 level, and the legislative analysis program, including the legal affairs officer, is being administratively transferred from legal services to the executive office.
The three accountants, the supervision of them, is that, when we're adding 3 people and we're keeping existing supervision, is that still sufficient, or do we need to start looking at higher level positions to manage an increase in workflow? Because we so often in government like to throw the line positions and then kind of forget the supervision, and then it can get out of whack. So I just want to make sure we're monitoring that.
We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but those are in 3 different divisions, so it only increases the supervisor span of control by 1. Or units, sorry, not division.
Sorry, while we're at a stopping point, can we go back to slide 24, please? I'm just looking at the HR stuff, and since we were talking so much about hiring, and then I see a negative number next to it. Does that mean that we just thought it was going to cost more this year to get the number of people on?
Where are you?
Slide 24? Yeah, on human resources, sorry. I just want to make sure that is that the reason that we just thought it was going to cost more to get people on? Or I'm happy with spending less money, but I just want to make sure that we're adequately staffed for it.
Do you know the answer? I do. I believe the answer has to do with the outside recruitment. Cost of outside recruitments are quite extensive, and well worth it, right? Because it gets us those highly paid and or highly specialized positions. So because we did a higher number of those kinds of specialized outside recruitments in the current fiscal year, we're projecting fewer of those moving forward.
Wait, so the outside recruiting firm is cheaper, you're saying?
No, the outside recruiting firm gets paid as a percentage of the employee salary, right? So we budget, it's basically a contractual service that we have with outside recruiting firms, and they get paid as a percentage of the annual salary for their recruit. And that's how they're compensated for that work, versus our own staff who are just paid as a part of the regular process. So we handle, or Carly's staff handles the vast majority of our hiring, but we decided, because we were having difficulty with some of our specialized recruitments, that we wanted to use more outside recruiters. That was particularly necessary for investments, legal, and some of our upper level technology positions. So we had a number of recruitments this past year that were done utilizing those outside resources, but we do expect that to the number of outside recruitments to go down, because once those specialized positions are filled, they're filled. We don't need to go back to them. So we have some flexibility to be able to do, a more modest number of outside recruitments, but we're expecting that our own internal staff will handle the recruitments, a much higher number of the recruitments next year.
Yeah, that's great, and I don't want to speak for Trustee Fay, but I think he was saying we have hiring issues, but we're actually going to spend less money on HR. So that thing, but in any case, that your answer is great. On that note, since we're going back to slide 21, last year's adopted budget was 135 million, and then the actual projected was 120. This year we're proposing 140. What do you think the actual the actuals are going to be? I mean, obviously we're looking into the future, but are we going to be closer to the 140 this time, and what safeguards or what reason do you think, or are we going to end up actuals being like 125?
You're speaking specifically for the entire budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, number one, I do believe one of the assumptions that we changed, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we're budgeting at step 1 versus budgeting at step 5 for previous fiscal years. So in terms of salaries and employee benefits, we are using a lower estimate We also plan on hiring, and that hiring plan seems to be coming to fruition this year, this coming fiscal year. And so most likely, I would anticipate the numbers are going to be more in alignment with the 140,000 versus the 120. I'm sorry, the 140 million.
Just to elaborate, recall that we have 49 positions that we were planning to fill in the fourth quarter of this year. Those positions were not fully funded, but they were funded to a certain extent for the 23-24 budget. They're going to be fully funded in 24-25, and they're going to be filled at the beginning of the year. So we're going to need that full funding. We also have a number of positions that we know we're going to hire based on the hiring plan earlier in the fiscal year. So where the cost of that, reducing that vacancy rate down to hopefully 15%, we're putting more money in the budget for salaries and benefits in those in the earlier part of the budget. So we are hoping to make it more in line. Also, we don't have COLAs beyond December. So if we feel like we'll make every effort not to come back to the board to ask for additional funding, but we didn't plug it in. No. So we assumed just based on the current salaries and salary step and merit increases that our existing employees would be entitled to. And then, but if there's actually a possibility that we would go over this depending on what you all decide about salary negotiations and what we're able to successfully negotiate.
Well, I just want to acknowledge and I appreciate the CEO and the staff's effort, because I know a lot of these issues are beyond your control, and I know it's a lot of effort, and a lot of the new board members are coming in at the tail end after you fix a lot of these things, so thank you. But yeah, that was just a question. That's a great answer. Look forward to actually realizing the proposed budget, and I know, and you guys from the previous board as well, constantly badgering on filling the staff vacancies, which I know it's in your interest as well. So we're preaching to the choir, but I appreciate you guys coming up with strategies to actually get there.
Ms. Contreras, you were on slide
24. Let's see, I think actually 25. Let me look. Nope. We are on slide 27.
Oh,
Okay, this slide, excuse me, this slide provides the summary of vacant positions. I'm losing my voice.
a lot to be said here.
Way more than apparently I'm used to talking at a board meeting. Let's see. This slide provides the summary of vacant positions by division as of March 31st, 2024. Please keep in mind we expect to hire and promote 49 staff in the fourth quarter. So this vacancy rate is expected to decrease, and the breakdown by division will look very different on July 1, as previously mentioned by Dr. Natoya. We expect even further improvements in 24-25 with the increased number of hiring lists promulgated. Again, something we've discussed extensively this morning. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the costs associated with the 6 net new positions proposed for fiscal year 24-25. The full year salary impact of the positions is approximately $550,000. The total budget impact for fiscal year 24-25, including the variable benefits, which include retirement and health benefits, is approximately $910,000. We will discuss why these positions are being requested in the next slides. Next slide, please. So LACERA, we're going to first talk about our vendor management program staffing. LACERA currently operates a decentralized vendor management program. Each division has one or more contract administrators responsible for ensuring compliance with LACERA's applicable laws, rules, and standards, including data privacy and security. The current structure poses numerous challenges: inconsistent practices, limited risk visibility, and ineffective performance management, to name a few. With the recent adoption of a strategic plan that prioritizes risk mitigation, compliance, and the creation of internal controls and tools to ensure fiscal durability, a centralized vendor management program is foundational to executing our objectives. This newly created section would support 15 divisions with vendor management, including vendor engagement, due diligence, solicitations, risk assessment and mitigation, selection, contract negotiation, onboarding, monitoring, and offboarding of LACERA vendors. Due to the diversity of the needs of each division and the complexity of the work involved, ASD management is requesting the addition of 1 supervising administrative assistant 2 and 2 administrative service analyst 3s to support a centralized vendor management section in administrative services. The supervising administrative assistant 2 will oversee procurement and contracts. It is ASD management's intention to reassess and provide for future staffing needs for fiscal year 25-26.
Confirm for me that we have somewhere in our software applications a program that's helping us manage this, centralize this and all that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Next slide, please. Legal services staffing. Or maybe I'm out of
Still
order.
on
I have
accountant
financial and
one.
accounting services staffing. FASD requests 3 new accountant 1 positions, which if approved would increase their total staffing from 30 to 33 positions. All 3 of these positions are on the general accounting side, reporting and compliance, reconciliations, and disbursements. FASD has relied upon temporary staffing to address current workloads for the past several years. Additionally, we anticipate significant work associated with the potential implementation of a new Tier 3 for retiree healthcare, impacting all 3 units. We also have work planned to modernize our processes, including the planning for a new enterprise resource planning tool to replace our current financial system, which is facing end of life. We anticipate the exam for Accountant 1 to be released this summer and anticipate no difficulty attracting top candidates in filling these positions. Next slide, please. Now we're talking about legal services staffing. The volume and complexity of investment transactions is growing as the plan assets grow and have outgrown the legal services office's capacity. 2 new attorneys were recently hired, but existing support staff remain overburdened. Investment deals are time sensitive and require diligent review and oversight. 1 additional legal analyst is requested, and 1 vacant legal secretary position is administratively transferred to this unit. Exams for legal analysts, legal secretary, and senior legal secretary are currently in development, and we hope to fill these positions in the first quarter of fiscal year 24-25. The legislative affairs officer position is being administratively transferred to the executive office, freeing up the chief counsel to focus on the oversight of attorneys. Lastly, we would like to acknowledge that the current structure and staffing levels within the Legal Services Office limits staff growth and development and overburdens the chief counsel with too many direct reports. LACERA's ability to address this unilaterally has been impacted by the current litigation. So we are now working with the county CEO's office to review our structure and the staffing levels and compensation of our attorneys. We do anticipate bringing proposed solutions back to JOG-C and the Board of Retirement and Board of Investment sometime within fiscal year 24-25. Next slide, please. This slide is regarding our ethics and compliance unit. To implement strategic priority objective 4.1, a new ethics and compliance program is proposed to begin operations in fiscal year 24-25. The role of the ethics and compliance program is to enhance LACERA's ethical culture and establish dedicated resources to foster compliance with laws, regulations, policies, and procedures, and provide assessment, monitoring, investigation, training, and other services to mitigate ethics and compliance risks in the organization. The Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer will report to the Audit Committee and the CEO functionally. They will also provide reporting to the Board of Retirement and Board of Investments to further support the fiduciary duty of the Audit Committee, boards, and the CEO. They will also provide oversight of ethics and compliance and respond to red flags in these areas. The proposed Ethics and Compliance Office will be administratively housed within the Legal Services Office. However, all staffing and expenses will be tracked and reported separately to ensure that the Ethics and Compliance Program is adequately resourced and independent, which is consistent with best practices. Next slide, please. Fiscal year 24-25 services and supplies. This is going to be a discussion regarding the summary of significant changes across LACERA. The most significant increases in services and supplies is reflected in computer services and support, which we will discuss in greater detail in the next slide. Other significant increases include additional costs for educational expenses and travel and transportation and travel. These expenses reflect inflationary increases associated with in-person educational conferences, as well as a modest increase in the number of conferences attended for both staff and trustees. Staff also looked at opportunities to reduce costs, eliminating one-time expenditures. Equipment maintenance is reduced by $305,000 due to the completion of the uninterruptible power supply upgrade project, the upgrade of key card readers, and audiovisual upgrades. Funds budgeted in office supplies and equipment for divisions have been removed from office supplies and equipment and into two accounts within computer services and support, which we will discuss on the next slide. So in fiscal year 24-25, Systems Division requested 4 new accounts to separate the procurement and support of infrastructure software, as well as software solutions developed and supported in-house, from the procurement and subscription costs of software as a service. New projects for divisions and for the enterprise are highlighted. Costs for completed projects like the Avaya communication project have been removed. And before we move on to our retiree healthcare benefit program and OPEB trust budgets, do we have any questions? Okay, next slide, please.
I have a quick question. I believe I read that our tech budget does not go into our CERL cap, correct?
I'm sorry, can you?
That our tech budget does not go into our CERL cap? So I know this is not saying that we shouldn't include it, but just more for thinking about these investments in technology could actually help us more and not be subject to they could be one-time costs that we then use to make everything else cheaper in the future. Is that correct?
That is accurate statement. So under CERL, we are not required to include the tech budget.
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Yeah.
Right? And we can, in the future, have the discussion, as previously mentioned, to remove it from the cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Highly anticipated retiree healthcare.
Yes, retiree healthcare. So now we are ready to move on to the retiree healthcare budgets, the retiree healthcare benefits program and OPEB trust budgets. Next slide, please. One more slide, please. Thank you, Bonnie. This chart provides a snapshot of the 3-year budget trend for the retiree healthcare benefits program and the OPEB trust. The proposed budget for each is represented by the orange bar on the far right of both charts. Okay. Next slide, please. The proposed budget for the administration of the retiree healthcare benefits program totals approximately $13.6 million, which is $900,000 or 7.1% more than fiscal year 23-24. The most significant impact of this change is related to salaries and employee benefits. Next slide, please. This slide highlights our fiscal year 23-24 budget to projected actuals and compares that to the fiscal year 24-25 budget requests highlighted in gold. We're going to drill down into the biggest drivers of these increases in the next few slides. Next slide. The most significant increase for RHC is the increase for variable benefits. This cost went up because of a number of staff were or will be promoted, making them newly eligible for benefits. With regard to services and supplies, departmental overhead costs, or the costs associated with LACERA's administrative support for the RHC program, is expected to increase by $237,000 or 4.7%. This is fairly close to LACERA's overall administrative budget increase of 3.1%. Additionally, $90,000 is added for the member verification and $50,000 for outside legal counsel. One-time costs for the triannual experience study and OPEB valuation costs have been removed.
So I have one question.
Yes.
Mr. Harris. So basically, the budget for 24-25 for retiree health care, we administer it, but our pension fund doesn't have anything to do with that budget because it goes back to the County of Los Angeles, turning that over to us to administer. And we can freely administer it with these significant changes to the budget, keeping up with inflation, et cetera. Is that true?
I believe what you've indicated is true, yes.
That's correct.
That's
Just,
correct.
Just for newer trustees who won't confuse the budget that we just went over, that's with respect to the pension fund. Now this budget is with respect to the counties giving us monies for our retiree health care, which
Right.
they pay for.
So they pay an administrative fee to LACERA to administer, for RHC staff and for LACERA, to administer the program.
Yes.
They reimburse us.
There you go. Right, so that's different than the funds that they pay to the carriers, which do funnel through us to pay the actual premium increases. This is LACERA staff time to answer members' calls, to transfer, to counsel them, to negotiate with the carriers to make sure that service is excellent. That's the work that the retiree healthcare benefit staff perform, and their budget is separate and distinct.
And where does the cost for the consultant come into play? Is that out of?
It comes out of this budget.
Okay.
Okay, no further questions. The next slide, please. This is regarding our other post-employment benefit trust. So the proposed OPEB trust budget for fiscal year, God bless you, 24-25 is approximately 1.1 million. The OPEB trust budget consists primarily of LACERA administrative staff support required to manage the trust, totaling approximately $825,000, plus direct services and supplies costs of approximately $314,000. Direct costs includes fiduciary insurance, outside legal services, and audits. The significant cost increase is due to more investment division staff time spent and a planned audit by the internal audit division. No questions? Next slide, please. This slide highlights our fiscal year 23-24 budget to projected actuals and compares that to the fiscal year 24-25 budget request, which is again highlighted in gold. Next slide, please. This concludes our staff presentation of the fiscal year 24-25 preliminary budget. We have included additional slides as an appendix that outlines our strategic work plans for fiscal year 24-25. Our management team are available to address any questions you have, and as always, we welcome your feedback, especially if we make any adjustments that you would like us to include for the Board of Retirement and Board of Investments in June.
Any questions, suggestions? Recommendation, I think we made some of our recommendations during, okay, just let me finish. I think we made some of our recommendations during the presentation. So do we do a separate motion for those recommendations or adopt the presented preliminary budget with the recommendations?
I recommend that we move these to the individual boards with our noted recommendations included in the document.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Ms. Martin? Aye. Mr. Harris? Aye. Mr. Fay? Aye. Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Chair Gray?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you for a very extensive presentation.
Yes.
With the board being very involved, it makes it good.
We've sat through a tougher budget hearing,
Yes,
so
we
good
have.
job for everybody involved in this.
Yeah, this is like easy. And what I really like, and I have to tell staff, is that your slides and information is so readable. I mean, it was easy to read, easy to understand, and you didn't give us numbers in these little itty bitty tiny lines that I could never see anyway. That was a very good presentation, and you made it understandable for all. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7, items for staff review.
So there were several items that you guys mentioned, but I think the one item would be that Mr. Kehoe requested a presentation at the OOC meeting for the rehired retirees hours and the resources that we have available for the employees and employer. But all
And
the
then
other
also
one-
direct the staff to bring back to Jog C the retirement projections,
Yeah,
internal retirement projections.
Yes, and we also owe you sample letters of the welcome and the dunning notices for the 120-day.
Yes.
And then we're going to provide you with a FYI memo to the both boards on the changes, the comparison between the 23-24 actuals versus the 23-24 budget.
and there were several requests clarifying vacancies and the trends from different trustees.
Yeah.
So that'll be reflected in the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll take care of that.
Okay, very good. All right. Are there items for future agendas for the Jog C? Any items? Anything anyone wants to cover? Okay. So, good of the order. Mr. Fay? Nothing. Mr. Harris?
Not a thing. Good meeting, although those two words shouldn't be used together. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kehoe?
Excellent meeting, and once again, appreciate all the effort from staff. I know that this is an entire organization component, and I just, every year over year, we do better, and I love it.
Yeah. Mr. Jones?
Likewise, very complimentary to staff. You learn something new every time you go through the decks and questions, the things that come up through there, and appreciate the thoughtfulness that goes into that and to communicate that. So,
Mr. Rue?
Great first meeting for me. Thanks to staff and thank you to all the board members for all your hard work.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Yes, a well-organized, professional, public entity. I don't think I've ever used that before. So anyway, thank you.
Ms. Nee?
Very engaged discussion on among the board members. So thank you for being so engaged, and thank you, team, for the great work. Yeah.
Mr. Kryman?
Yes, I just wanted to thank the trustees for their support and of the budget presentation and staff, as well as moving the budget forward to the Board of Retirement, Board of Investments. And I just wanted to also acknowledge my staff, all of the division managers, the executives. They did an outstanding job this budget cycle, and I agree that we're getting better at it. And so thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Basically, I would just like to say thank you. That was a great presentation, one of the best I've ever seen in 12 years. So your hard work is really paying off. Our new systems, programs, they're just coming to fruition in terms of keeping up with what's happening in the tech world, and I really appreciate that. And there were no conflicts with anyone being able to see blue, light blue, or dark blue. That was great. Either blue or gold. Go Bruins. But anyway. Is there a motion for adjournment? All right, adjourn. Thank you.
Mr. Root, your lunch